The Ancient Landmark with Jarrod Jacobs. Tune in each week as we study God's Word together.
Welcome to another edition of the Ancient Landmark. My name is Jarrod Jacobs. I'm so thankful to be with you that we might open up God's Word, that we might study together and learn from the book of God. If you've been able to stay with us the last few episodes, you know that we have been studying from the book of Matthew, and Matthew 5, 6, and 7, and learning about Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. If you're interested in this episode or any of the other episodes, feel free to order them from us, and they will be sent to your house absolutely free of charge. And you can go to our website at www.southside-churchofchrist.com, and there you'll find a page set up where you can order the episodes concerning the Sermon on the Mount or any other of our television episodes. They're certainly available to you, and you're welcome to all of them. We're going to continue in this study, like I said. We're going to begin in Matthew chapter 6 at this time. And so go ahead and feel free to get a Bible out, get some notes, or take some notes, and follow along with the things that we're going to study. Just by way of a very short review, we might remind you that Jesus has come in the last part of Matthew 4. He has come to this place where the multitudes and multitudes have gathered to hear Him speak. Jesus sets himself up on the side of a mountain. And there, up above the people, up above, high there, so He can speak, and His voice will resonate down with those in the valley. And there they hear Him speak. And Jesus begins talking about those who will make up His kingdom, the characteristics of those in the spiritual kingdom. We have talked about this from the standpoint of this being Pentecost pointers, because by the time you come to the day of Pentecost in Acts chapter 2, we're going to read about the establishment of the Lord's church, the beginning of the Lord's church, and how each and every person who would be a part of the Lord's church will be characterized in the ways described in these chapters. Jesus is preparing these folks. And so also today, if I'm going to be in the kingdom of Christ, if I'm going to be a citizen, then I need to have this same attitude. And so we've studied in times past, in the last few episodes, we've studied about the Beatitudes from Matthew chapter 5. We've also studied the rest of Matthew chapter 5 and showing how Jesus compared and contrasted those outside of His kingdom and then those who would be in His kingdom. There's a great play here shown about, a great play made concerning hypocrisy and how folks would be hypocrites, and that would not be a part of the Lord's kingdom. He contrasted these folks and said, your righteousness needs to exceed the righteousness of the Pharisees and the scribes, and how one does that. And so Jesus dealt not only with a particular sins, but He also went back and talked about the attitude problems and the things that led to various sins. And so it wasn't just a matter of saying, thou shalt not kill. He says, don't you be hating people. Don't hate people. He talks about not only the fact of thou shalt not commit adultery, but it is, do not look to lust after someone. Let's just go ahead and deal with it right at the source, right at its beginning point. And whenever someone is looking and they're lusting after someone, their mind is not right. It leads then from that step, it'll naturally progress to the next step and the next to where you have committed adultery. Don't do that. He goes on and talks about marriage situations. And he talks about the fact that if someone has wronged you, that doesn't give you the right, or me the right, to take vengeance on somebody. You know how many times folks have watched movies and read books perhaps, that the theme and the focus of that book or of the movie or whatever was about that someone was wronged in some way, and then that person, oftentimes a man will be the one who is wronged, and then he will go out and systematically kill everyone who has wronged him on some event. And so he will go through and just systematically go through, bang, 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 and kill everybody until he has received his vengeance. Jesus in Matthew 5 says, don't do that. That is not for you to do. That is not for you to be that way. In fact, some of the hardest things we can do is when he says someone smites you on the right cheek, just let him smite you on the other one too. Turn the other cheek. And the point is not that you're taking account, but rather that one would smack you this way and smack you with the back of their hand as if to insult you. And he said, you just go ahead and take that. How many times Jesus, you think about Jesus himself, how many times he was smacked, but did not take his vengeance. Someone hates you, he said, you love your enemies, you bless them that curse you, you do good to them that hate you, and pray for those which despitefully use you and persecute you. And you think, man, that is hard words to listen to. And that's a hard saying for me. But then you think about Jesus Christ. Didn't he live that in his life? Didn't he live those very words? And the fact that he dies on the cross shows he loves his enemies, because everyone in the world at one point or another has been his enemy. And we recognize those who become Christians are not his enemy anymore, but I'm saying they all have sinned. Romans 3:23, all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. Therefore we've all been his enemies at some point. And Jesus has died for all, Romans 5:8. So those things being true, Jesus continues with this thought process. And that's just a very short review. But again, you can have those DVDs if you'd like. I'd be glad to study with you. You can just contact us. We can have a private study over these things if you'd like. But whatever the case may be, that's what we've come up to. Jesus continues this discussion, continues this sermon in chapter 6, where he says, take heed that you do not your alms before men. Chapter 6, verse 1. He says, take heed that you do not do your alms before men to be seen of men. Otherwise, you will have no reward of your Father which is in heaven. This idea of alms or almsgiving, this idea of charitable work or charitable things we might do. And he says, you make sure you're not doing that just to be seen of folks. You know, that happens. And in fact, that happened in the first century. I think about Acts chapter 5 and the first 11 verses. Ananias and Sapphira were there. And Ananias and Sapphira had conspired together to lie. You see, there was a great need in Jerusalem at that time. And I know I'm jumping ahead in time, but just bear with me. At this time, the Lord's church is established. And at this time, the kingdom is in full swing. And there was a need by folks, because there were people who did not have money to live. They didn't have food. They didn't have shelter and all of that. And they were there in Jerusalem and they needed money, they needed food, they needed those goods whereby they could stay and live and that type of thing. Well, in Acts 4 we read about Barnabas, who had some land and sold it and he gave it. And how wonderful that was. Well, you go to Acts chapter 5 and there Ananias and Sapphira do the same thing. But their deal was this. They had sold a piece of property. But then they gave only part of the money to the apostles. That is, for that charitable good. But whenever they spoke of it, whenever they presented it, it was presented as if that were the entire sum. You see, they wanted to be seen of men. They wanted people to ooh and ah over what they had done. They wanted people to get excited and talk about how great they were, like they talked about how great Barnabas was. And they wanted that. So they lied. And in their lying, both of them died that day. Within the space of 3 hours, both of them were dead. Now you look back here, Jesus said, don't be doing that. Don't be giving alms and things like that to be seen of men. If you're doing something to be seen of men, he said, you're not going to have a reward in heaven. Jesus was just that blunt about it. Matthew 6:1. It wasn't just to be seen of men. If you're going to do it, you make sure that your heart is right. And hadn't that been our focus? Hadn't that been what we have learned through Matthew chapter 5? Was he saying, make sure your heart is right? And so here it is again, make sure your heart is right. Therefore, when you do your alms, don't sound a trumpet before thee, and all of that as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets. He said that you may have glory of men. Verily I say, they have their reward. In other words, those who would go and sound the trumpet, as it were. Those who would go and tell everybody and say, look what I'm doing, look what I'm doing. And they give. And he said the people ooh and ah and talk about them and talk about how great they are. Oh, aren't they charitable? Aren't they wonderful? And all of that. He said, listen, you wanted that kind of praise? You got it. You've got your reward. In other words, don't worry about a reward in heaven. That's not going to happen. You wanted the reward of men. You wanted to be seen of men. You got it. That's what a hypocrite does. That's what hypocrites do. They do things to be seen. It was not done of a genuine heart. It was not done of sincerity. It was not done out of really love or true love. It was done out of what will people think of me when they see me do, say, whatever. That's what they're doing. Jesus was condemning that. And listen, someone like that is not fit for His kingdom. He already said, you're not going to heaven if you act like that. But when you do alms, verse 3, when you do alms, let not the left hand know what the right hand is doing. He goes on and says that thy alms may be in secret, and thy Father which seeth in secret Himself shall reward thee openly. God who sees in secret will reward you, and we ought to be happy with that. Even if no man ever knows what you did, God who sees in secret shall reward you openly. And he goes on and tackles another situation. He talked about the almsgiving, all right? And in fact, you can read about this also in the book of Luke, where Jesus was watching at the synagogue, and all these people were throwing in their money, and they were throwing it in, and they were giving out of their abundance. And he said, then there was the widow with her 2 mites, the 2 coins. She threw in, and Jesus said she gave more than anybody else. She gave all her living. Those other people, they were just throwing in out of their abundance. He said she gave all of her living. And I imagine as you look at that, you're going to see that also a contrast between folks doing things to be seen versus a woman here who does it sincerely, out of love for God and respect for Him. And that's what's going on here. So Jesus tackles that almsgiving business in this sermon, and then He goes to the next thing and says, now when you pray, and we'll deal with prayer for a moment. When you pray, He says, thou shalt not be like the hypocrites are. This is verse 5. Who love to pray, standing in the synagogues and in the corners of the streets, listen, that they may be seen of men. Verily I say unto you, they have their reward. There it is again. When thou prayest, enter into thy closet. When thou hast shut the door, pray to thy Father which is in secret. And thy Father which seeth in secret shall reward thee openly. Now we recognize that this is not a blanket condemnation of any public prayer. We understand. And in fact, he's going to talk about how to pray here in just a moment in this very chapter. This is not a blanket condemnation of public prayer. What he's saying here is, don't offer prayers wherein you are doing this to be seen of men. And people think you're some kind of a pious person because they hear your prayers and they hear you and you're saying these things and just, going at it. That is not the thing. That is wrong. He says someone who does that and they're making these long prayers as was common at this time period. And he said, you have your reward. If you really want the Father to bless you, you see the contrast now? If you really want the Father to bless you, then you actually pray a genuine prayer to Him. A sincere prayer to Him. A prayer wherein He said, you can go in your closet and shut the door. In other words, so you're not doing it so that people see you. You're not doing it for that purpose. The Father which seeth in secret shall reward thee openly. Just like the alms he was talking about. The Father sees in secret, and He'll reward you openly. When you pray, do not use vain repetition as the heathen do, for they think they shall be heard for their much speaking. Be not like them, for your Father knoweth what things you have need of before you ask Him. And that's what we find here. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that wonderful? And so you look here and He says, God knows. See, God knows what you have need of, even before you ask Him. Somebody says, well, what's the purpose of praying then? The purpose of praying serves several needs. One of them is communication with your Father. One of them is that we recognize that we are in need, that we submit to Christ, you see. And I show myself, and it's an admission of myself. Whether or not anyone ever hears me pray, it's an admission of me to God, saying, I am dependent upon you. I'm dependent upon God for all that I need and for all that I might have in this life, and certainly spiritual things as well. The citizens of the kingdom of Christ are citizens who pray, praying to Him. Your Father which seeth in secret shall reward thee openly. And He says, you go ahead and you pray, and yes, your Father knows what you have need of before you ask Him, but you still ask. And children are like that sometimes. You think about children to their parents, and you know what your children need before they ask, don't you? You know what they need. You know they need food and clothing and shelter. You know things that they need. But you know, they still come up and they'll still tug on Mama's dress, or they'll pull at you and they say, I need this, I need that, you know. And you know, we're glad to provide when we can those types of things that they're in need of. But you and I both know that oftentimes parents to children, parents will not give their children some things because they know the children can't handle it, or they're not mature enough, or whatever it is, and they don't get it. Here's your Heavenly Father the same way. But He still wants to hear. We pray to God, and we speak to Him, and we pour out our hearts to Him because of our love, because of our concern, because we know to whom all blessings have come, or from whom all blessings have come, and we know to whom we belong. We belong to Him. If you've become a Christian and you have believed on Christ and you've repented of your sins, you confess your faith in Him and are baptized for the remission of sins, as Acts chapter 2 teaches, you're a part of that kingdom. You're a part of that church. And you becoming a part of that now have these special blessings and have these special things given to you. And this is part of it. Jesus is warning us, isn't He? Jesus is telling us about this. So He says here that your Father knows what you need, even before you ask Him. And from verse 9 through verse 13, verses 9 to 13 speak of a prayer, what's often called the model prayer. Parallel accounts talk about how the apostles had asked, these disciples had asked Him, well, Jesus, would you teach us to pray? As John taught his disciples to pray, would you teach us to pray? And so Jesus is praying this prayer and showing them how to pray. After this manner, therefore, pray ye, our Father which is in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done upon earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. Now, that prayer is what's been called, again, the model prayer. It's a model for the disciples to pray, and they were going to. But right there you see several things spoken. It wasn't a prayer, and even as we look back, it wasn't a prayer that Jesus expected you to do but wrote. I says, what does that mean? It means a prayer that someone just says, and you just say that, you know, and over and over and over again, perhaps, and you never give thought to what's said. You just sing it. You just memorized it, and you just saying the words. Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us a day our daily bread. You see what I'm saying? It wasn't the purpose of that. And even in this context we see that, because Jesus just got after him for that. Saying don't have vain repetition. Don't think that you're going to be heard for your much speaking, but rather this sincere prayer, this prayer pouring out to God, where you go in the closet and you hide and you shut the door and then pray your prayer. But it was a model prayer, no doubt, and no question about that, wherein folks do see principles that are laid out, addressing God the Father, our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. That talks about holiness. That's Him. Thy kingdom come. Well, you and I both know that the kingdom has already come. It came in Acts chapter 2. The kingdom was promised, wasn't it? And then the kingdom was promised while Christ was on earth, just like this. Jesus said to folks in Mark chapter 9 and verse 1 that they would not taste of death till they've seen the kingdom of God come with power. So the kingdom is going to come when the power comes, because the kingdom of God comes with power. And he said, there's some of you standing here that would not die till you saw it. And then you come to Acts chapter 2, and sure enough, the power did come. The power came in Acts chapter 2 when the apostles were endued with power from on high by the Holy Spirit. And when the power came, the kingdom came. And so the kingdom was there in Acts chapter 2. And Jesus said, there's some of you standing here, Mark 9:1, and not tasted death till you've seen the kingdom of God come with power. And sure enough, from the time that was stated till the time of the day of Pentecost was a matter of months. And so those folks were alive, and they were there, and they did see it, and they did witness it. But in Mark chapter 6, we are a few years away from. And so he says, thy kingdom come. That's the point. You wouldn't pray thy kingdom come today. You just wouldn't do that. You wouldn't ask for Christ's kingdom to come when it's already come. And that's my point. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Yes, we ought to have that attitude that says, I want God's will done on earth as it is in heaven. We know God's will is done in heaven, and may God's will be done on earth too. And whenever God's will is done on earth, we'll be a blessed people. When God's will is done on earth, we'll show that we are a saved people, and we will be blessed, and we can look forward to being in heaven one day. He goes on, give us this day our daily bread. Give us this day our daily bread. Well, that has to do with our physical needs, doesn't it? The recognition that says that Christ and that God, here the Father that I'm addressing, the Father, that He is mindful of my needs, and I'm asking. It's not a demand in that passage. It's not a demand or a command from God, give it to me. No, this is a asking. This is a request. Give us this day our daily bread. In other words, I need to continue to go back to my Father daily in request for that, because He blesses me daily. Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Well, that's kind of like what Jesus said in Matthew chapter 5. You go back to Matthew chapter 5 for a moment, and there verse 7, blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. And here it is again, forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. We think about God forgiving us. You think about God forgiving people today, and we say, no sin is so great that God can't forgive it. And folks, that's the truth. No sin is so great that God won't forgive it if we repent. Then why can't I treat my fellow man that way? If I know and am assured that God will forgive my sins, if somebody sins against me, why can't I forgive them? And this passage says in verse 14 and verse 15, if you don't forgive somebody, Christ won't forgive you. It's just that serious. Well, we continue on, and he says, lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil, for thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. To be led, not led into temptation. We are led, rather, led into righteousness, led in a godly way, led toward heaven. How beautiful and how wonderful this section is. Just as much as Matthew 5, so also Matthew 6. These thoughts flow, don't they? And so here Jesus goes in verse 16, the same thoughts, the same theme here. We've talked about hypocrisy, we've talked about sincerity, the need for it. We've talked about all of that. And so now you come into verse 16 of chapter 6, moreover when you fast. When you fast, be not as the hypocrites of a sad countenance, for they disfigure their faces, that they may appear to men to fast. Verily I say unto you, they have their reward. But thou, when you fast, anoint your head, wash your face, that thou appear not unto men to fast. but unto thy Father which is in secret, and thy Father which seeth thee in secret shall reward thee openly. Again, someone was going to fast. He said, and they disfigure their face and they look bad. You know, maybe they hadn't shaved. Maybe it's a man and maybe he just looks dirty and all of that. And maybe he's just disheveled and just all of this and then just doesn't look right. And somebody come up and say, oh, what's wrong with you? What's wrong? You don't look right. What? And the answer, oh, I'm fasting for God. Oh, I'm just going. And they say, oh, isn't he so pious? Isn't he such a wonderful person? Why, he's gone without food. Here, that's fasting. He has gone without food, and he is serving God, gone without food all this time. Oh, God said, no. When you are going to fast, and that's what they did back then, of course. He said, get up, conduct yourself as normal as you know how, wash your face, look good, look normal, go out and don't let on. Don't let on. Your Father will reward you in the meantime. But don't let on. That's not what it's about. And even today, if someone wants to fast today, that's your business. Someone wants to fast, then they're going to do that for God. Not sit there and complain, oh, how hungry I am. Oh, no. Keep away from that. If you're going to do that, just do it the way the Father has said to do. The point through all of this section, again, you see how it ties in with Matthew 5, if you kept up with us. It ties in with Matthew 5 because he is just nailing down all the hypocritical, all the things that folks were doing back then, rather and in contrasting that with sincere, genuine purity. Pure worship, pure actions, pure service to God that was from the heart and that was doing what the Lord says because He said to do it, and doing it regardless of whether or not you ever got any accolade. The citizens of the Lord's kingdom are that way. The citizens of the Lord's kingdom are the ones that say, I'm interested in serving the God of heaven regardless if anyone ever likes it or not. And that's the point. And so, whether or not man likes it, I'm still going to do what He says. Whether man promotes it, I'm still going to do what He says. Whether man agrees with it, I'm still going to do what the Lord says. And that's that section right there. And we're coming up here on a break in just a few moments. And when we do, we're going to come and we'll give you an opportunity to see our address and website and things. Feel free to write those down. If you'd like to order these DVDs, they're yours, absolutely free. On the other side of this break, we'll come back and continue with chapter 6, starting Matthew chapter 6 and verse 19, and then go through the rest of this chapter as we continue in our study of the Lord's sermon, the Sermon on the Mount.
You're watching The Ancient Landmark with Jarrod Jacobs. Write us at 2920 New Hartford Road, Owensboro, Kentucky, 42303. Visit our webpage at www.southside-churchofchrist.com. Join us on Sunday morning for Bible class at 9:30. And Sunday morning worship at 10:20, Sunday afternoon at 5 p.m. Wednesday night Bible classes for all ages at 7 p.m. Write to us for a free correspondence course. And or a subscription to The Old Pass, our teaching bulletin. Tune into our radio program, What is Written, from 12:30 to 1 p.m. Sunday on 94.7 WBIO. And continue to watch The Ancient Landmark on Monday at 9 p.m., Wednesday at 5 p.m., or Thursday at 11 p.m.
And we're back again and want to continue in our study of Matthew chapter 6. We left off looking at Matthew 6 and verse 19, and so we'll continue there in our study of the Lord's Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus said in Matthew 6:19, "Lay not up for yourselves treasures upon the earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, where thieves break through and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also." And we just read verses 19 to 21 to get that sentence there, to get that sentiment there. That's found here as a reminder. He says, "Now don't lay up for yourselves treasure upon the earth." Well, as we already have noticed, these people, we had the hypocrites, we had some of these Pharisees and others doing that very thing. Lay not up for yourselves treasures upon the earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, where thieves break through and steal. Had they not been doing that, in one sense, by having their reward, we might say, by men, the fact that they had done their alms in a public way, prayed the long prayers and all of that, and even in the disheveled faces and all of that that would go on in the fasting. And he said so that folks would see them. Folks would see what they were, what they were doing, and just go on and on about them. And he said, you have your reward when you're doing things to be seen of men. So also lay not up for yourselves treasures upon the earth. Don't lay up those things and just be worried about what's on the earth. He says, moth and rust can corrupt that. Thieves can break through and steal. If your focus and your goal is only upon the here and the now, upon getting all you can and canning all you get, and trying to get and just pile up and pile up and pile up, he says, there are things that are going to rot, they're going to decay. He said thieves can take them away. So also you think about what treasures folks might have had, or what accolades men might give. Men are very fickle, aren't they? And so if you look here just in this chapter 6 of getting their reward, so-called, from men, well, the very next day, those same men who thought you were so pious and wonderful and great could very well turn against you, and then you would have nothing, wouldn't you? And then how much more when we're doing this to be seen of men, so as to be rewarded by men. He says, don't lay up for yourselves treasures there. Moth and rust corrupts, thieves break through and steal. He says, rather lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven. And even in this context, he said, God who sees in secret shall reward you openly. Lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven. Well, what kind of treasures can be found in heaven? Well, you're talking about spiritual treasures then, aren't you? We're talking about spiritual blessings. We're talking about those types of things, the things that can never be taken away. I remember in the book of Luke chapter 10, in the last part of Luke chapter 10, where Mary and Martha were in the house and Jesus was speaking, and Martha was cumbered about with much serving and all, and Mary listened to Jesus. Martha was upset and told Jesus, now Jesus, you need to tell her and Mary to come in here and help me. And Jesus said to her, Martha, Martha, you are careful and troubled about many things. But he says there's one thing that is needful. He said Mary has chosen the good part that shall not be taken away from her. You look in that passage, what did he say? He said, here were things, you lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt. Thieves do not break through nor steal. Peter also wrote about this. He was an apostle, and in fact, the apostle Peter was present in Matthew chapter 6. He heard Jesus speak. He heard Jesus say these things. He's very familiar with what was going on. And not only that, to know and to be aware of what Jesus was saying then, but of course, being inspired of the Holy Spirit and writing the things that he wrote, of course, later on. He says that here in 1 Peter chapter 1 and verse 3 and 4, where he says, blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. He says, which according to his abundant mercy hath begotten us again unto a lively hope, or a living hope, by the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, to an inheritance. Verse 4. To an inheritance incorruptible and undefiled, that fadeth not away, reserved in heaven for you. Jesus promised this in Matthew 6, what Peter's talking about in 1 Peter 1:4. Whenever he said this inheritance is incorruptible. It is undefiled, and that does not fade away, reserved in heaven for you. And here's Jesus saying, if you just lay up for yourself treasures in heaven, moth and rust will not corrupt. Thieves will not break through and steal. They will not take. A thief could come in and take anything he wanted from your house, couldn't he? And I imagine I'm talking to some folks. I imagine I'm talking to people right now who have suffered through and have been vandalized, or rather been thieves have taken your stuff, haven't they? Someone has robbed you. Someone has taken your things. Now I imagine I'm talking to folks who have done that, who have lived through that, and know what that's like whenever you had something one minute and it's gone the next, and you have no idea who took it, and you have no idea, you know, how they even knew how to get in or how they knew how to get your stuff, but it was gone. And you feel wronged, you feel upset about it, and you are saddened and angry at the same time. And you think about those things, and Jesus said there's a reward that thieves do not and cannot steal from you. Men cannot take that away from you. Wasn't that wonderful? Isn't that what you want? Isn't that what we all want? You lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust corrupt, but thieves do not break through nor steal. For, verse 21, for where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. And that's the key right there. These folks' hearts were not in it, were they? That's why you're reading about such hypocrisy in chapter 6. That's why you're reading about that. It's because their hearts were not where they were supposed to be. Jesus says you get your heart in the right place. And by the way, this is the Bible heart. Whenever you look into the Bible and you begin to read, you'll learn that the Bible heart thinks, the Bible heart knows, the Bible heart loves, and all of that. This is the Bible heart, the mind. Where your treasure, your intention, your will, and all, that's the Bible heart. And so, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. Let me ask you something. Where is your heart then? Where is it? Is your heart set in the right place? Or is it not? Are you doing things to be seen of men or not? Somebody says, I'm no hypocrite. I'm not doing anything for God, but at least I'm not a hypocrite. Well, that doesn't make any better then, does it? Because in that case, you know your heart's not in the right place. Because the heart, the intent, the will is there, and it is in the wrong place. Where your treasure is. Where is your treasure? Are we all caught up in the here and now and the things of this world? Don't be that way. Don't act like that. Don't live your life that way. But rather live for Christ. Live for Him. Be a part of His kingdom. And that's what we were saying. All of this shows the characteristics of those who are citizens of the kingdom. Those who have believed on Christ, repented of their sins, confessed their faith in Him, and been baptized. And those folks, He says, can have their reward in heaven, where their treasures are laid up in heaven, and their heart is there too. He then talks about this idea of this sincerity, this purity that goes on. The light of the body is the eye. Therefore thine eye be single, and the whole body shall be full of light. But if thine eye be evil, the whole body shall be full of darkness. Therefore the light that is in thee be darkness. How great is that darkness? How great it is. How great it is whenever we're not living what we say we're doing. And again, it goes back to this idea of this sincerity. If you say, another place we could go to talks about the fact that if, in the book of 1 John chapter 1, that if we say that we walk in the light, he says, or we're in the light but we walk in darkness, we lie and do not the truth. Are you just saying that you're walking in the light, or do you actually walk in the light? Are we living, really living what we say we believe? You know how you can find out? Take a good look. Take a good look on the inside. Examine yourselves. 2 Corinthians 13:5. Examine yourselves whether you be in the faith. And in that examination, do an honest observation. Do folks really see you as God sees you? Do folks really know who you really are? The citizens of the Lord's kingdom are sincere, pure. They are genuine. They are genuine. Sometimes folks may make fun of you because they think you're just naive. It's not being naive. It's being genuine. It's being true to your principles. It's being true to your God. It's being faithful to Him. That's what it takes. And that's what we're reading about here. These are the kind of people that are under consideration. In fact, verse 24, no man can serve two masters. For either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he'll hold of the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and man. You cannot do it. No man can serve two masters. Now, listen, you're going to have a master. Somebody is going to rule you. Now, Romans chapter 6 shows us that we'll either be a slave to God or we'll be a slave to Satan. But somebody is going to rule you. It's going to be God or Satan. But the thing of it is, no man can serve two masters. Either he will love the one and hate the other, or he'll hold of the one and despise the other. You can't have both. You can't have it both. Some folks try it both ways, don't they? And they just think they're going to sit on the fence. Let me tell you something. You can't sit on the fence for too long without something rubbing. When you get enough blisters there, you will get up and you will move. You cannot sit on the fence like the one ad a friend of mine saw one time. It was a personal ad, talked about some woman. She was looking for a man. She said she was a Christian lady though, but she said, I've got one foot in heaven and the other on earth. No, you can't do both. You can't do that. No man can serve two masters. You must make a decision. You must make a choice. And that's where the conflict comes in. That's where that comes in. 1 Peter chapter 2 talks about this also. In 1 Peter chapter 2 and verse 11, where Peter, again, a man present on this occasion, a man who was there hearing Jesus speak in Matthew 6, and now as an apostle writes this book, 1 Peter 2:11 says, Dearly beloved, I beseech you, strangers and pilgrims, abstain from fleshly lust, which war against the soul. Abstain from the fleshly lust which war against you. There's a fight, there's a struggle going on because no man can serve two masters. And God wants you to serve Him, and Satan wants you to serve him, and I'm the one, and you're the one that's got to make the choice. Make the right one then. Make the right one. Here we find it again. You've got to make that decision. You cannot serve both. You cannot serve two masters any more than a man could ride two horses going in the opposite direction. You know? You can't do it. You know, I've seen people ride horses, sometimes two at a time. And maybe you've seen them too. But you're familiar with the fact that anytime you've seen one man ride two horses, he had those horses fairly close together and they were both going the same direction. He didn't get one foot on one horse and one foot on the other horse and go opposite direction. You try that sometime. You see what happens. You do that and jump on one horse going two different directions. Something's going to tear. Now, I don't mean his shirt. If you look here, no man can serve two masters. You'll love the one or you'll hate the other. Let me ask you something. Who do you love? Who do you love? Do you love yourself? Do you love God? Do you love God more than self? Do you love God more than your family? Do you love God more than your job? Do you love God more than your children? Do you love God more than your spouse? Do you love God more than anything else? You see, He'll only take first place. And even as you continue in your study of the book of Matthew, Jesus will say that we must love God more than father, mother, son, daughter, all. We must love God more than all. And you know the beauty of God's plan? Somebody says, that doesn't sound right to me. But the beauty and the wonderment of God's plan is that whenever I determine I'm going to love God more than anything else, and my wife says I'm going to love God more than anyone else, and my children say I'm going to love God more than anyone else, we all together grow closer. We all grow closer to each other. Even more so than the one who says, I'm going to put you before God or anyone else. Don't do that with a man. Rather, serve him. Well, continue to read. Therefore, he said, I say to you, verse 25, take no thought for your life, what you shall eat, what you shall drink, and yet for your body what you shall put on. Is not the life more than meat, and the body more than raiment? Jesus is dealing with some folks in the first century that sound a whole lot like the folks of the 21st century, don't they? What are you worried about? What's the number one worry on folks' mind today seem like? It's what we're going to eat, and it's what we're going to wear, and that type of thing. What we're going to eat and drink, what we're going to put on. That's folks' number one concern. I mean, look around. How many people are worried about going out to eat? How many people are worried about, what do your children often talk about? I can tell you what my children have done. My children in the morning, whenever they've eaten breakfast, have turned around and asked their mother what they're going to have for supper. Worried about what we're going to eat, aren't they? See that? And everyone's like that to a degree, aren't they? We've got to fight that. Jesus said, take no thought for your life, what we're going to eat, drink, what we're going to put on, those physical, earthly things. He said that shouldn't be your first concern. And he goes on, he says, is not the life more than meat, and the body more than raiment? Isn't it more than that? Sure it is. And he gives an example. He says, behold the fowls of the air, the birds. He says, they sow not, neither do they reap, nor they gather in barns, yet your heavenly Father feedeth them. Are you not much better than they? Aren't we much better than a bird? He said the birds don't go around worrying about what we're going to eat and what we're going to wear and all of that. They don't gather into barns. They don't toil, sow, and reap and all of that. Your Father takes care of them. Can we not have that childlike trust and that childlike faith in God? That's what's needed. And Jesus is going to make this clear. From this verse 25 on down to the end of the chapter, this section is going to be made clear and be a clear contrast with what we've just read in the first part of chapter 6, talking about the hypocrisy and the self-centeredness and the folks looking after themselves and all of that. And Christ is going to bring it down to the brass tacks, we'd say, showing what is truly important. He says you shouldn't be worried about those things, what we're going to eat in that sense, and so consumes you, you can't think about anything else. The birds don't worry about that. He says, and why? By taking thought. Which of you by taking thought can add a cubit to your stature? In other words, by worrying about it. Which of you by worrying can add a cubit to your stature? Can that is, make yourself taller. And why take you thought for your raiment? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They toil not, neither do they spin. And yet I say to you that even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. Wherefore, if God so clothe the grass of the field, which today is and tomorrow is cast into the oven, shall not he much more clothe you, O ye of little faith? Where is your trust? Where is it? Are we truly trusting in God? Oh, I'm not saying folks shouldn't work. They should, and they ought to. But do we not recognize that it is God's blessings come to us, and that He blesses those who work and labor and all of that? But He says, don't have that over-anxious, that worry, all of that, that anxiety that comes. That ought not be a part, and it is not a part of the citizens who are in my kingdom. We're not worried about that because we know God blesses, and we know God will give freely, and He will give willingly and lovingly to those who are His. He loves you. Whenever you become a child of God, as we've talked about through faith and repentance and baptism, and you become a child of God, God has accepted you into His family, and you're called by His name, the name Christian. And we can enjoy the spiritual blessings that are in heavenly places in Christ, Ephesians 1:3. And certainly we can have those blessings and physical blessings as well. David said in Psalm 37:25, I have been young and now I am old, yet I have not seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread. The righteous were not forsaken. They are not forsaken by God. His seed is not begging bread. They're doing the Lord's work. And they are industrious. They're working and all of that. But again, at the same time, trusting God for all. How trusting are you? That's the question. You look at the things Jesus was dealing with, how often the times of the first century so mirror and follow so closely with the times of the 21st century. People are really not that different, aren't they? People really have not changed that much through the years. Oh, well, we drive better cars maybe, but really there's not much difference, is there? And you see this here. Whenever it comes to beholding the fowls of the air and even the flowers, the lilies of the field. Why, he said Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. And you think about Solomon and the glory he had and the physical blessings he enjoyed. And then you look at that beautiful flower. Solomon is not arrayed like one of these. That's a blessing from God. So also God will bless us. If God clothed the grass of the field, which today is and tomorrow is cast into the oven, shall he not much more clothe you? O ye of little faith. Therefore take no thought, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or wherewithal shall we be clothed? That's verse 31. Verse 32, for after all these things the Gentiles seek. For your heavenly Father knoweth that you have need of all these things. Didn't we read that earlier on in Matthew 6? Why, yes we did. When here Jesus speaking in the model prayer talked about this and said that your Father knows, he said. Matthew chapter 6, he talks about this. That your Father knows what you have need before you ask it. You remember that? Matthew 6 and verse 8. And here it is again. Your Father knows, he says, what you have need of. But he said the Gentiles. In other words, he's talking about folks that were considered outsiders to the Jews. Those outsiders, he said, those things the Gentiles seek after. And if you were a Jew in the first century, that's one thing you would not want to be compared to in any form or fashion was a Gentile. If you were a Jew back then. You wouldn't want to be compared to a Gentile in any way, shape, matter, or form. To say that you're like them. And he says, listen, the Gentiles seek after that kind of stuff. About what we're going to eat and what we're going to wear and those types of things. Your Father knoweth, your heavenly Father knoweth that you have need of all these things. Verse 33, but seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. That's the crux. That's the point of this section here. From verse 25 to verse 34 of Matthew 6 is getting to this point. But, the word but is a contrast. Now we've talked about the things that Gentiles look after. We've talked about what we're going to eat, what we're going to drink, what we're going to wear, and that type of thing. But seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. And all these things shall be added unto you. All these things. All what things? Well, all those physical things we were talking about a moment ago. All those things, the Lord knows that you have need of those. And the Lord will take care. And he will see. Now it's not as I'm talking about this is not saying, this is not a promise from Jesus, God, or anyone that says if you'll just become a Christian, you'll get $2 million in the bank and you'll get, fancy cars and mansions on the hill and all of that in Beverly Hills and what. That's not those kind of promises. That's not what it's talking about. And it's a shame and it's a travesty whenever you see folks talking like that, acting like if you would just follow God, why God would make all your financial woes go away in an instant and you'd have millions of dollars. That's ridiculous. But what he's saying here is that when we do what the Lord says, then there will be a way. Just like David said, I have not seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread. God will provide. And if you think He won't provide, then shame on you. And sometimes we're tested in our faith, but God will provide every time. He says here, all these things shall be added unto you if you seek first the kingdom. That has to do with His authority. That has to do with His reign. Aren't we talking about this? Hadn't this been the point of Matthew 5, 6, and 7? Was the kingdom and the citizens of this kingdom? You seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness. Where's His righteousness found? Well, the Bible tells us, Psalm 119, all Thy commandments are righteousness. And in Romans 1, verse 16, says this also about the gospel being God's power to salvation. Remember that? And has to everyone that believeth, to the Jew first and also to the Greek. Verse 17 of Romans 1, for therein, there in the gospel, therein is the righteousness of God revealed from faith to faith, as it is written, the just shall live by faith. So whenever I seek first the kingdom of God, His righteousness, all these things shall be added unto you. Verse 34, take therefore no thought for the morrow, for the morrow shall take thought of the things of itself. Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. In other words, you just need to worry about today. You just need to worry about now. You just need to worry about this. Don't be worried. How many people have gotten complexes over what's going to happen in the next 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, and all of that? How many people just get overloaded and have all kinds of anxiety and all kinds of mental issues and everything else because they're always worried about what's yet to come, and they're not dealing with the here and the now. They're not dealing with what is real. They're just worried about things that might happen, and so oftentimes they don't. Jesus said, don't act like that. We work. We're active in the Lord's work, and we're active in our lives now. Seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness. All those things shall be added unto you, so that you don't need to worry about it. There need not be any anxiety. There need not be those types of things at all. And that's the point. That's the point. And so we'll stop here for a moment. We'll stop here in our study, and then we'll pick up, Lord willing, next time in chapter 7 and talk about Matthew chapter 7 and those things relative to the Sermon on the Mount. These things that Jesus has said and Jesus has taught, and that reveal the characteristics, the actions, and the attributes of a citizen of the kingdom of Christ. We're so thankful for this time and thankful for our study together. We look forward to seeing you again very soon. Until then, we'll bid you good day.
You've been watching The Ancient Landmark with Jarrod Jacobs. Tune in each week as we study God's Word together on Monday at 9 p.m., Wednesday at 5 p.m., or Thursday at 11 p.m. The Ancient Landmark has been brought to you by Southside Church of Christ at 2920 New Hartford Road, Owensboro, Kentucky 42303.